I will sing unto Yahweh, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider hath he cast into the sea. Yah is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation. My Father's God, and I will exalt him. Yahweh is a man of war.
Hello there, good day. Welcome to the Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today our study in the book of Exodus, chapter 15. And let's begin by reading it. Excuse me. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake and sang, I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed. Let's just try that verse all over. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation. My father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains are drowned in the Red Sea, are also drowned. The depths have covered them. They sank into the bottom as a stone. Thy right hand, O Lord, is become glorious in power. Thy right hand, O Lord, hath dashed in pieces the enemy. And in the greatness of thine excellency thou hast overthrown them that rose up against thee. Thou sentest forth thy wrath, which consumed them as stubble. And with the blast of thy nostrils the waters were gathered together. The floods stood upright as a heap, and the depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My lust shall be satisfied upon them. I will draw my sword, my hand shall devour them. Thou didst blow with thy wind. The sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders? Thou stretchest out thy right hand, the earth swallowed them. Thou in thy mercy hast led forth the people which thou hast redeemed. Thou hast guided them in thy strength unto thy holy habitation. The people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold of the inhabitants of Palestina. Then the dukes of Edom shall be amazed. The mighty men of Moab, trembling, shall take hold upon them. All the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. Fear and dread shall fall upon them. By the greatness of thine arm they shall be still as a stone. Till thy people pass over, O Lord. Till the people pass over, which thou hast purchased. Thou shalt bring them in, and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance, in the place, O Lord, which thou hast made for thee to dwell in the sanctuary, O Lord, which thy hands have established. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. For the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them, but the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and dances. And Miriam answered them, saying, Sing ye to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously, and the horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness, and found no water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them, and said, If thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord that healeth thee. And they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. I don't think we'll continue reading because we will only be able to cover this chapter, so let's just stay here. Okay, so this is the recap of the events, but it's also a song which tells us, which is structured a lot like a psalm. It's funny to me, I didn't realize till as I was reading, I'm like, you know what, it's funny because my song goes into the narrative part of the text, because I think the song formally ends when he says, the Lord shall reign forever and ever. The end. Amen. But then the commentary afterwards I included in my version, which is funny. But, So they sing this song to the Lord. I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation. My father's God, and I will exalt him. So there is this memory that they constantly emphasize. It's my father's God, the God of my fathers. Like I said, as you read these things, it's very tempting to be like, oh, I'll just plug this into modern times. I mean, you can do that, but like I said, you got to plug it all in. You can't just plug in some of the scriptures. You have to take your whole understanding with you. And if you just think about, like I said, the amount he demands certain things. But my thought immediately, of course, always is of the Lord Jesus and the things he said. Who are the children of God? He said, I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me. You don't do the works of Abraham. And in that regard, you are not counted as his children because you have another father. You do the deeds of your father. When we do the deeds of Satan, he becomes our father. I said, I saw Jesus. I read his Gospels. And I think it's stunning to me the number of Christian pastors I see picking up the Bible and they go to Genesis and they start talking about how God approves of everything that's going on over there. Like I said, let's have Jesus riding the 2,000-pound bombs like a cowboy, whooping it up, and he's all for this, right? That's our Lord. Yeah, sure. You've really been studying hard. If you look at the things he said about the natural seed, it's apparent that you do not just get a free ride. But I'm genetically that way, so I get to do whatever I want. I can kill whoever I want. I can take their stuff if I want. I can, and all in the name of God. And he's got to stick by it because his word says so. You mock God. They all mock God. Some of them ignorantly, But it's like, to me, it's like, how can you be so foolish? I know exactly how. Blindness. It would work. It worked for me too. I was apologizing for this stuff for years. I apologized for it until my eyes were open. So I guess I can't be too disgusted with it, right? But I'm thoroughly disgusted with it. Because it's like, I guess what happens is when your eyes are open, you feel like, hey, at this point we should all have rights. Because mine open now, so yours should be open too. Don't always get what we want. We got to be compassionate even towards those. Well, because I definitely feel a tremendous amount of sorrow for the Jews in Israel because they blacken their souls, Listen to some of the former IDF talk about what the things they have to do and how it just destroys them internally, There's some things that some people are monstrous and can be made. And honestly, that's a terrible fate to be made into a monster as far as I'm concerned, to end up like Pharaoh. Just thinking, I'm I'll pursue. I'll overtake. It's for me. The Lord always demanded obedience, loyalty, faithfulness. You know? Especially as a, and again, people forget that whole thing is a bit of a farce now. Like I said, because God doesn't want people to worship him at some temple. Jesus already made that clear. God himself made that clear when they wanted to build the thing that he didn't really care for it. I don't need a temple. I live in a tent. Now you guys want to, okay. For the hardness of men's hearts, he gives them divorce. He gives them a temple, a king, and it always, just like he says, he lets them build a temple, and pretty soon they're offering sacrifices to other gods in it, worshiping the sun from his temple. And you're like, and he's going to bless what they're doing now. Just because. Throw yourself off the temple. It's okay. The word of God says the angels will bear you up in their wings, so it's totally okay. That's exactly how they are looking at the situation as it is now. All right. If God is our strength and song, if he's going to be, what does that even really mean? We just blindly comfort ourselves with the words of the Lord. Oh, look at, like I said, you can just, the devil went right there with the Lord Jesus. This is fascinating thing. That's why people try to say, he twisted the scripture. Go read the original. Tell me what you're making a distinction without a difference. I remember Bullinger be like, so what? He was quoting it from memory. I do that too. He got the basic idea. Tell me it does not say the angels will bear you up in their wings, lest you dash your foot against a stone. He added it at any time. So what? It said keep you in all your ways. All your ways is about as good as any time. Whatever. No, what he did is he twisted the intent, the meaning. And also, like I said, a lot of these things, the promises of God, God's going to save you, but that doesn't mean you won't die. You may die. You're going to live forever, but you're going to die also. So it's like there's more to it than just what you think. I will prepare him in habitation. Like I said, what does that look like? We prepare our hearts for the Lord. They wanted to build him something on earth. But I think there's something more than that. That the Lord inhabits the praises of his people. Even in this, they're sort of building something for God to inhabit. He doesn't have to inhabit our praises, though. I mean, like we can talk about God. We can praise God. But he can also actually really come and inhabit it and be our God. And it's like, because, I was watching a rabbi talk about the red heifers, right, that they want to say. He's like, sacrificing red cows is not going to make God come and inhabit the house, he said. You can't make God do things. And he's right. Very wise. You don't make God, I don't say come and he goes, I don't say jump and he says how high. It's not how it works. There are scriptures that make you feel that way because Jesus will say, like, ask what you will and it shall be done to you. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, being the condition. When we let God's word abide in us, when we let it enter into our mind, not just as words, but as having meaning. There are things God cared about, things that were important, things that he laid before us as this is what you do. And when we don't do it, and then we try to claim his protection and claim his umbrella over our actions, it's blasphemy to drag God into our ungodly deeds. I want to know God. I want to prepare a place for him. The Lord seeks such to worship him. Neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem. The Lord is a man of war. That's why God, in righteousness, Jesus, it is written, in righteousness he doth judge and make war. He will make war. The world is at war with him. And so then it will be responded to. The armies of the world, they will have slain his servants. Then they've done many other evil things. Many of them are probably in the name of God. If you think about it, like I said, like when I think about what they're doing to the people in Palestine, and they think this is good, this is righteous. It's a righteous thing to kill women and children. We're fulfilling the prophecies. This is the way it's done. Oh, that's not happening. You're ignorant. Oh, it's great. It's happening. You're a monster. You know, there's two sets of people there. One denying it, the other one's cheering it on. I'd ask the ones denying it, what's with them? Why are they cheering on a genocide and acknowledging it, whereas you think you're just denying it? You're in denial. That's what it is. You're in denial. I mean, they just knee-jerk denial because you don't want to believe it's true. You haven't bothered to look at the evidence. Sorry, I'm making this all about that. Because God is a man of war, and he will go to war against the evildoers. Like I said, careful. And say, well, they're evil. Yeah, I know. Oh, October 7th. I know. Like I said, I only woke up after October 7th. I wasn't watching back in 2014 or whatever when they were doing the peaceful march to the border where they were walking up to the fence unarmed and being shot down and gunned down like dogs. I didn't notice. So they gave up on that, When if the only language you know how to speak is violence, that's what you're going to get. And that's what Israel is. The only language they speak is violence. That is the land they want only for themselves. They lie and pretend like it's not an apartheid state. They say, "Oh, we have a few token Palestinians in our Knesset and all that." Oh, yeah, can a Palestinian person move into your country and buy a piece of land? Can they? They have equal rights like you? No. It's all special rights for them. Well, Paul, they have to. For what? So you can have your little fetish fulfilled of prophecy? Shall we bring down fire from God as Elijah did? Should we do that? They didn't receive you, Lord. Well, I'll tell you what. There's a lot of cities over there that don't receive Jesus. Oh, you don't know what spirit you're of. Yeah, that's right. But they thought so. Right on their own people. And it's, like I said, we should take care when we start calling for people to be eliminated. That's really dangerous stuff. We should be looking for peace. Christians cheering on war for the sake of prophecy is disgusting. Meaning there is a time for war. Okay? It's serious business. Just like killing. And God is the only legitimate maker of war as far as I'm concerned. He makes war in righteousness. I've never seen it done by anyone else. Certainly none of our wars are very righteous. They tell me we were out to do good. I'm the sap who believed them. Never again. Men, the princes of this world are just darkness on steroids. I hate that analogy. I can't believe I actually used it. Whatever. Darkness on steroids is just stupid. All right. He is thrown into the sea. His chosen captains drown in the Red Sea. It is a portrait of salvation. The enemies of God's people destroyed. Those who would destroy us, be destroyed. As I said, there is, like it says in the Proverbs when we covered. Remember it says hey, don't be too happy and excited when your enemy falls into bad things. Don't rejoice too much, because when God sees that, he may turn on you, because God does not lie. That you don't understand. God takes no pleasure in the destruction of the wicked. And so, what do you suppose he thinks of the destruction of the innocent? And especially when it's done in his name, that makes it exceedingly sinful. Oh my goodness, I'm going to cramp up here. And so there's a lot of description of the Red Sea crossing, right? The depths have covered them. They sank into the bottom as a stone. Thy right hand, the hand of thy strength, glorious in power, showing his power, making a wall of water on either side. It's very hard to believe for us. Not really, not for everybody. I'm just saying, just for the natural man, we think, wow, that sounds crazy and impossible. Yes, that's why they're miracles. They're meant to let you know for sure that it's God, because it's something so outside of your natural experience that you know this is not of man, this is not trickery. That's why God has to do things like that. Or not has to, but that's why he chooses to do things, to reveal himself to them. When you think about it, if God had just come to them as Jesus came, they'd been no different than Moses. And as he did come, we see what happened. He didn't do, for those who would kill him, he didn't really show them often the same miracles. They demanded of him a sign. Even though they knew he had done healing, many had observed him doing healing. But people getting better from sickness somehow was not impressive to a lot of people. And I suppose because unlike a wall of water standing on stuff, it's not necessarily out of the natural order. You generally do see people get sick and then recover, right? But the kinds of things Jesus did with like the man with the withered hand, raising Lazarus from the dead, right? But just like the children of Israel, in the face of those miracles, people are stubborn. And it's not surprising, even to this day, people like Richard Dawkins will even declare that even if they saw a miracle, they would presume they were hallucinating, and they would still steadfastly refuse to believe. That's quite amazing when you think about it. But that's how deep that hidden wisdom, when it's hidden from you, that's just how utterly lost you are without the Lord's revealing himself to us by opening our eyes. I don't actually believe him that there's nothing that could convince him. I know the Lord could convince him, probably with much less than he says would take, right? He says there's nothing that could convince him. Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. There are ways of changing a man. Trauma. I mean, like having an encounter with God can be traumatizing. And that trauma will alter your outlook on life. Yes, sir. God's right hand has become glorious in power by using his power and showing it. His right hand is revealed, his strength, his power, his salvation. And you notice that, like at the righteous scarcely be saved, as I said. They are in this really peril. The salvation is in the midst of peril. You know what I mean? They're under the sea. They're walking through it. A wall of water on each side. That had to be somewhat terrifying in and of itself. And marvelous also. It's just like all the if you've ever been, see anything really grand, it has a way of being, like the Grand Canyon. There's a grand thing. You have a sort of sense of awe and of beauty, but also it's kind of scary, especially when you go to the edges and you look down and like, whoa, because of the potential. And the greatness of thine excellency, as I said, the greatness of thy majesty, which is, I think, probably a little better translation. Thou hast overthrown them that rose up against thee. Thou sentest forth thy wrath, which consumed them as stubble. Like I said, the people who were living in the land of Palestine weren't rising against God. I think the attitude of the Lord towards them would be very similar towards the Samaritans. They're a very good example because they tried to follow the Jews' religion, but they weren't doing it right. And Islam is a corruption, if you will, of Christianity and Judaism. It contains elements of both, much like the Samaritans' religion. And, these are people who are God-fearing, but need to hear the gospel, and they should not be treated like Canaanite pagans who sacrifice their children. And they shouldn't be slandered in that some say, oh, they baked babies in oven. That's a lie. If you look at the list of the dead from October 7th, there were 2 babies, unfortunately, that were killed. But none of them were cooked in ovens, all right? They're invoking the Holocaust, doing all kinds of things to really play on people's emotions and play on people's fears and to play on stereotypes. Like I said, when people are oppressed, yes, if they can't get a political solution, they turn to God. And unlike my God, their God did not say, turn the other cheek, And like I am fond of saying, well, what's my excuse then? If we're a Christian nation, what's our excuse for killing people? for not turning the other cheek, for going after our enemies 100%. What's our excuse? You know, they have a religion that teaches them violence. Why are we so violent? Our religion teaches us, their religion also teaches peace, and go to war. They have a doctrine of going to war. We don't. So what's our excuse? That's what I'm saying. It's like, we're Christians. We're supposed to be better than this. But we're not. Or, like I said, I don't believe in the concept of Christian nations is really messed up. Just like the concept of that place over there being messed up, because the true Israel of God, the true prince who wrestles with God, Jacob and his seed, ultimately that seed is Christ and all who are born of him. He is the one by whom all the families of the earth are blessed. He is the one who inherits the land. He is the one who sits on the throne. You don't, in the name of God, in a godless way. They didn't even do it in the name of God. Why am I saying in the name of God? They don't do it in the name of God. They do it in the name of their race. And if you haven't figured that out, that they're basically exactly like 40s Germany, well, then maybe you'll figure it out eventually. Because that's exactly what we're looking at. Except we're helping them. So I say, man, we're storing up wrath against the day of wrath. You don't think so? Well, like I said, people think it's just, like, it isn't just like God to reverse roles. That isn't just like him to do the unexpected. Oh, yeah, it's what everyone thinks it's going to be. Sure. It's just like all the pastors say. Support Israel no matter what. Oh, yeah, good idea. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what the Bible says. No matter what, we got to support them. No matter what they do, right? Because you know why? God, if you read the Old Testament, you know that God supported Israel no matter what. No matter how they behaved, no matter what they did, he was always on their side. He never sent any Assyrians against them, never sent any Babylonians against them, never sent all kinds of things against them to chastise them, never sent them carried into captivity, never slew them. People don't know their Bible. They go back to the beginning. Every time I hear a pastor talk about this, he goes to Genesis. It's like, read me from Jeremiah also, and what he said about being in the land. You understand? God judged that already. And he brought them back after 70 years, and then Jesus came and he said, your house is left to you desolate. Now they return. Like I said, they return to his land, but they do not return to him. Bless them that bless thee. I won't bless that. I have the blessing. I'm in Jesus. And with all of my Jewish brethren in Christ. I know some of them might be on the wrong side of this, but again, blindness. How can you know Jesus and support murder? Oh, I'm not, I'm not supporting what they did on October 7th. I think that was wrong. They should have continued to choose the path of peace. Impatience. And now tens of thousands of them are dead. I don't think that, I don't blame the victim, but the path of peace would have a slower burn. It's frustrating seeing kids get shot in slow motion for them, but having whole families buried under buildings ain't so great either. No, so I don't disagree. That was I don't know if it was a mistake, whatever. Mistake. I said it's the wrong way. Violence is the wrong way. Let the Lord decide when violence is going to come. And I mean as far as like he is the one. I'm not called to violence but to peace. I'm a violent man. I love violence. I've said this many times. I've tried to not fantasize about being violent with my enemies because and trust rather the word of the Lord. Though I'm pretty sure, whatever. I know that it's like, we have to trust the Lord. Even if he suffers us to be beaten, because you will be beaten. In their synagogues, you will be beaten. Boy, and that makes sense now. When I see how violent they are, What do you think, when Jesus talked about people being beaten in their synagogues, what do you think? You think that's something to do with what Revelation talked about with synagogues of Satan? Yeah. Like I said, I'm glad to know, and it was comforting for me to listen to the rabbis who teach that this is wrong. So I know that at least, even though they do not know Christ, I believe they know their Torah and they know their Talmud. That was the thing I couldn't remember the other day. Torah and Talmud. Talmud gets a little off the track as far as I'm concerned, and it's more of a debate, so you can't like look at that and like hold everything against them. One should not. And also, every religion is going to interpret their text. I interpret my text. When people, people try to use the Bible to slander my religion, they'll go back to the Old Testament. They'll pull out some verses about slavery, and they'll say, "See, Bible's evil. It advocates slavery." They don't leave it to me to interpret it for myself, which is, because like how I think about that is what my religion is, not necessarily what the text just says there, because everything is interpreted through a human mind. You can't read without, you have to comprehend what you wrote, what you read, and then you have to say, well, in the broad context of everything I've been learning from God, what does this all mean? I like the way you sent forth your wrath. It's interesting that though they were destroyed by fire, by water, the fire analogy is still here. The wrath goes forth like fire to consume them like stubble. Stubble, of course, is the most finest grains of hay or vegetable. Like when you have very, very small, like you have hay and then stubble is even less. Okay, there we go. It's like the dust of the hay. Very flammable. Just like if, you hear about grain elevators occasionally exploding because you get all that burnt, combustible material and very fine particles in the air. It acts almost like a gas combined with oxygen, right? You got oxygen, you got all these husks and the little tiny particles that have been beaten and it gets into the air, and it can be explosive. And it's amazing when you think about it. At least that's what unless I'm very much mistaken, I always heard that grain could be dangerous like that. Stubble goes up. And he's saying they went up they just went up like stubble. Gone in an instant. Where's my thing? All right. With the blast of thy nostrils, the waters were gathered together. Actually, because nostril often means wrath itself. Though it's kind of cool here. I think I translate it different in the song. And also the word heap is really a bad translation. I think wall is better here. In fact, the flood stood upright as a wall. Not as a pile, but there was a wall of water on one side and a wall on the other. The depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. They were gathered together. That's what congealing means in this context. Yeah, I think the blast of thy nostrils, I translated the spirit of your anger. Because actually I think blast is ruach, which is the spirit. And nostril, again, it's a idiom for anger. In fact, let's just look at it. I'll show you. I remember that, and I'm sort of not going to my thing. It's one of those cases where I can actually, from memory, remember what things meant. Well, there's a couple of cases. With the blast of your nostrils. Their nostril... The blast is ruach, which means spirit. Here's nostril, af. A nostril, nose, face, anger. See, it means anger. And that is depending on, it is one, a nostril is an organ of breathing. Two, the face. It can be the face because of the nose. Mostly anger. This is mostly, again, notice, mostly it means anger. That means the idiomatic use of it is the main use. From the rapid breathing and passion, apparently, as it says here, according to Strong. Properly, it means the nose, but hence it means the face and occasionally the person, but also from the rapid breathing, ire or anger, and mainly, actually. If you looked at all the, let's look here in Genesis. Let's see, we got nostrils. Okay, breathe it. God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Obviously, there's an anatomical reference. And the sweat of your face, and the sweat of your nostril, actually. You didn't realize that, did you? Neither did I. I wish let me narrow that slightly. There we go. No, a little more. There we go. It's still not completely on the screen. There we go, finally. Gee. Okay. It doesn't want it. There we go. And the sweat of your face. All in whose nostril, and maybe not, they said mostly, but let's see. Nose. Now here comes into Genesis 25. Until thy brother's anger turn away. Jacob's anger burned. His anger burned. His nostril burned. Their faces to the ground. Again, if your nose is to the ground, your face is to the ground. The nose is put for the whole face. Thine anger, 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 nostrils, anger, 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 anger. I see what they mean by most. Mostly it is. It's used 276 times. We only got up to numbers. But, it occurs more often as anger than nostril. Meaning both. So it could be either one, but the spirit of your nostril probably means the spirit of your anger, is what I think. The spirit of your anger, the water was gathered together, or it could be again, God breathed into man's nostrils the breath of life. Wait, was that actually, what is it? Yeah, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. The flood stood up as a heap. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil, my lust shall be satisfied. I will draw my sword. I will render unto every man according to his works. I will act as God, as judge, jury, and executioner. A lot of times that's an impulse, when we see things that we don't like, what we perceive as not to our advantage, or maybe even unjust, A lot of times we like to tell ourselves we're angry for just causes. We want to excuse our rage. And maybe we are. Or maybe we seem to be angry for a good reason because we have partial information. Like I remember, it reminds me of the time I falsely punished one of my sons because I saw he had this bruising all over his face. Like all around his mouth, there was like this big purple bruise. And I was like, what happened to you? He's like, I don't know. And I was like, wait a minute. You got a big bruise on your face. You don't know what happened? And I suspected maybe one of his brothers had done something to him and then threatened him. And I was like, I cannot have this. And he couldn't tell me what happened. And so eventually I gave him the belt. It was about 11 or something like that. And then only afterwards I realized I saw another kid doing the same thing, or I forgot exactly how I figured it out, but he'd given himself a hickey with a cup. He had a cup on his face and he was sucking on it and gave himself a purple mouth. Oops. But I thought I had a just cause for punishing him. I thought I had a just cause for being angry. And actually my kids told me later on that they thought that was actually made it okay. Maybe not okay, but like it made it eminently forgivable, I guess, because they realized I was doing it for a good reason. Because I couldn't have that kind of thing in my home. Even if I was wrong, I was hunting after evil. But we got to be careful. Again, in my house, I am given charge. I do punish. I do render according to the works. I have to. Because in this context, I am I need to rule this house well. I can't have unruly children. I can't have children that lie to me. I can't beat. And so, like I said, from an early age, I look for lies. Because I want to punish them for lying. I want them to feel like I ain't never going to get away from lying to dad because they get so nervous they can't handle it. And give them a conscience. I suppose there could be a child that's like very difficult in that regard, I don't know, my kids were always, I don't know if I can really attribute it all to my own techniques and all that. I think there's a bit of both following, of course, because it's not my own techniques. I follow the word of the Lord with wisdom. It's not just like, oh, spare the rod, spoil the child. So hit the kid as much as possible. No, when the rod is necessary, you must not spare it. When it's needed, you must not spare it. You should never give a child a rod if they don't deserve it. It's terrible. I felt terrible. Yeah, the enemy wants to pursue, wants to destroy, wants to divide the spoil. And you say, well, again, it's very easy to have a lot of sympathy with the Jewish people because of all the things they suffered through not just the Holocaust, but through history. After they were cast out of their land by the Romans, they wandered among the nations, were often discriminated against, persecuted, and then even in places where they should have found better treatment. Like in Christian lands, they had uncertain treatment. That's what I say. At least I'll say for the Islamics, they have rules. They say, well, in an Islamic country, Christians are second-class citizens and they have to pay their jizya. Okay, well, at least they have some sort of rule where I'm tolerated. I mean, it's like we could just, the thing is, we'll just turn on people. You know what I mean? We do, because even though we have a thing that we should love all men, I get it. Men of other faiths who will not hear the gospel, it's like, well, what do? I say you keep preaching the gospel. Do you believe in God, or do you trust him, or do you trust the sword? Again, I don't know. A lot of the things, history is such an interesting thing. There's been a lot of time gone by. But plenty enough for people to stop believing Jesus would return, I mean, a lot of people. The love of many waxes cold, And, sure, there's plenty of Christians waiting for him. But there are a lot, and there are more Christians than ever in a certain sense. But I guess I look at the decline of faith in my country and among my countrymen, and it's sad. But also, that it's like a lot of it is the decline of nominal faith. And though I've seen guys who claim they were really in it, but like, to me, they were just in retail Christianity. And maybe they were doing it seriously and, believed the mantras or whatever. Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again, or something like that. It's like I said, it's like I've never seen any of them. None of them describe having, tasted of the powers of the world to come. They haven't really been brought in as far as I would consider like something that would be like, I mean, I'm not saying that there's necessarily a way back for someone who turns their back on Christ like that. But I also doubt, knowing my own, how much I thought I believed when I was young, but then realizing when I got to 19 how nominal it all was before that. Even though I felt sincere. I felt I was sincere. I proved I was sincere because when I told God I would serve him for the rest of my life, I went and did it. To the best of my ability. You blew with your wind. Again, the wind there is ruach, the spirit. I'm not going to bring it up. Like it says, in the spirit of your anger, the blast of your nostrils, the wind is the spirit. The spirit bloweth where it listeth, and thou knowest not where it comes and where it's going, So is everyone that is born of the spirit, it says. Because we do not make the wind come. That's why the wind is likened to God's spirit, because it's there. It can be felt. It's palpable. But, when he wants it to be, it can be felt. When he wants it to be, he can reveal himself to you by his spirit. He can move upon the waters. He can make dry ground appear. He did use a strong east wind. Certainly, it's not, it's interesting because, obviously the sea could go back by a wind. It could blow it and make it go back. But if anyone, you've seen water being blown. We know water can be blown in a certain way. And also, gravity affects water. It can be lifted up high. Obviously, there are a lot of ways water can be manipulated by the forces of nature. This isn't like that absurd in a certain level. But the people, for them to walk, the wind would have had to stop, and then the power would have had to been used to hold it open. Because I don't know how the people could walk. The amount of wind it would take to hold up that much water by itself would be way too much for the people to walk through. So this would have to be, and that would be an east wind, which would be against them. And they'd be marching into the wind. So the wind would have to cease after it divided it. And then for a little moment there, God held everything in place. Or did it say the wind stopped? Wait, let me see. I forgot. Did it say the wind ceased? No, he said, Moses stretched his hand. Yeah, see, return to his strength. Nope. Not necessary. They sank as lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you among the gods? There's no God like unto you. Men make gods for themselves to worship, But they also, all gods are made in some way it's like it is a seeking after, I don't know, maybe not every god. I don't want to make a generalized statement like that. But I just feel like, like when you look at the different gods of the heathen and such, like Moloch or even the Greek gods, they're flawed and like men. Most people didn't have doctrines of perfect gods, holy. Zeus was anything but holy. Now, I now again, they would have a different concept of holiness, possibly. I mean, in the sense of that you as a human are filthy and ought to wash and come before the presence of a god cleaned and sanctified in some way. I don't know exactly how far they went with that as far as the Greek gods. But I don't think they had quite the obsession with it. Their gods weren't handing down commandments of do right. Obey me in this, obey me. I care how you behave. The gods had desires like men. They were greedy. They wanted power. They were just like the people who made them. And that's what the scriptures said. Our God is not like us, and we know he is not like us. We don't teach people that he is like us. He is unlike any other. Who is like you? None. There's none like thee. Glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders. Because the gods of the heathen did not do wonders, did not divide the sea and deliver their people out of the hand of captivity. The gods weren't in the business of delivering captives. Gods didn't care about people. They were involved in their own affairs. You had to, to get a god's attention in favor, you had to work, you had to do something, and then maybe they do you a little favor. If you would honor them enough, or at least, you honor the gods so bad stuff didn't happen sometimes. You wouldn't want to forget to sacrifice to Hera, or your wife might be infertile. You wouldn't want to upset Zeus, or you might get hit by a bolt of lightning. Or your house might burn down from a bolt of lightning, or whatever. You wanted to stay on the good side of the gods because they were capricious and they may decide to punish you just for not honoring them. And honestly, and if God exists, he deserves honor. And if we don't honor him, we probably deserve punishment, especially if we know that he is. If you know God, you ought to honor him as God. But when they knew God, they honored him not as God, as Paul says in Romans, right? They made God they took the image of the incorruptible God. And that's what I was getting at, is like what Paul was saying, that like, I don't want to use the word mockery, but somehow there's like this striving of man towards God, but they keep messing it up. They're trying to find that everlasting, immutable God. And I don't think immutable is the word I really wanted, but that holy, incorruptible. That was one. The incorruptible God, who is not corrupt in the least. But when they try to reach for it, they can't help but, as they craft an image of him, to put in their corruption and make God more like man. And that's why those gods don't even represent God. That's why he disowns all those things. That's why he said, you will not make any graven images, even of himself. Because they get it wrong. And then they start worshiping an image that is not God. And I've often had this feeling also about Christianity, that when you get far enough away from the doctrine of Christ, you're not really worshiping Jesus anymore. You're worshiping a false version of Jesus. Something else, something different, something that loves death and destruction and misery and likes to it doesn't say suffer the little children to come to me. He says, cause the little children to suffer some more for me. Okay, thank you. That's what he says. He says, burn the little children a little more for me. That's what they've made him into. They changed his incorruptible glory into something corruptible and like them. Something that is more concerned with the letter of the law and of making sure the right ethnic people are on the right ethnic slice of land. Yeah, that's what he's all about. Ever since Jesus came, we learned that was the truth. What all God really wants out of man is that we should give Palestine to the Jews. And he doesn't care how many children and women have to be killed for that to happen. It just has to happen. I'm being facetious, if that wasn't obvious. You stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. And in the mercy you led your people. Notice that there's mercy. Always mercy. From the first, salvation is mercy. It's mercy even like when God received Jacob. It was Jacob, when when he bargained with his brother for his birthright. God didn't have to honor that. He said, well, that belongs to your brother. What are you doing? But he honored it because his brother willingly sold it. And he was profane. He didn't value being the heir of God, being heir to what Abraham was promised to receive, the birthright of Israel, to become he became Israel. But before the children were born, having done neither any good or evil, neither having done anything, it was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger. Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. But which only goes to prove that it is not according to the natural seed. And Jesus confirmed that. I said he's looking for people of faith who put their faith in God and are willing to obey. That's what I mean. Don't say, are you going to tell me you're unwilling to obey? Do you think that's what faith looks like? I'm not saying you got to be perfectly obedient, but you're willing, right? Because it's like, if we're not willing, then what are we saying to Jesus? What are we saying? Are we legitimately going to claim that that's what faith looks like? I say I believe in you, but then I do whatever I want, and I disobey without consequence. Here's the thing: if I'm disobedient without consequence, then I'm likely a bastard and not a son, and God does not look at me at all, and nor does He honor my professions of faith if I have no correction. But when I do have correction, then I know He receives me. And because He cares about me. He don't want me to be a liar. He don't want me to be a stealer. He don't want me to be a murderer or have part and rejoice in them that do such things. So He chastens me. He teaches me. He doesn't let me fall into that foolishness. Thank God, although I've been a fool for a long time. But He calls us out of it. He opens our eyes. He reveals greater truths to us. I always pray for that He would reveal things to me. That's why on October 7th, I went to fasting and prayer. And I sought the Lord. I'm like, Lord, what do I say about these things? What do I say? And I watched, and I heard out of their mouths what they intended to do. I heard them invoking the Scriptures as if there was some sort of overlay. Oh, this is just like when they came into the Promised Land, just like it. Just like the first time. It's time to kill Amalek, right? Wrong. After having suffered the Holocaust, of course the next temptation would be do it yourself. Satan tempting them, do it yourself. Look at these people are in your power. You remember what happened to you. Therefore have no pity. Do unto them even as was done unto you. They didn't do it to you, no. But you can pretend, they've done terrible things to us. They've done some terrible things, no doubt. I said, look, if you only understand the language of violence, you're going to have violence. That's why America, we're going to have violence. We're being invaded, and there is no doubt there are violent men among them who are angry with this country and want to hurt it and hurt the people. The innocent people, because they've watched their innocent people be slaughtered for years. Like I said, I've known for years that we overthrew the government of Iran and installed the Shah. Why is it we allow our government to continue to do such things? It's not good for the world. It's not good for us. They think it is because they have a false wisdom. It's like a Machiavellian wisdom, which, on some level can work. You can get results, but there's a blowback. There is consequence. There is God. Machiavellian thinking is anti-Christianity. All right, it's a totally anti-Christian mentality. It's the mentality that says, do what you can get away with. Whatever you can get away with, do it. Here's the problem. While you think you can get away with things, you inevitably overstep. Inevitably. Every wicked person always does it. They get away with it a little bit. I'm like, woo, that was cool. I got away with that. I did a little stealing. And nobody caught me. Wow, free stuff. Let's do that again. I got away with it again. That's small, though. Let's go bigger. Bigger. What if still bigger stuff, And And it's a slippery slope because they get away with it. They think they can keep getting away with it until they don't. And even some people, God help them, they get away with it all their lives. And then they die thinking they got away with it, only to stand before the white throne and realize they lost everything. They lost more than they realized. Because there was a life everlasting on the table, and they took it and whatever. They passed it on by. I'm like, whatever I was going to say, I'm going to skip. I was going to use a bad analogy or something. In your mercy, you led forth the people who you have redeemed. Redemption usually carries the idea of purchasing. Like you redeem, like example, like when an ass, a firstborn ass, had to be redeemed. You had to pay a price for it, meaning you gave a lamb for the ass, right? Did I say ass? For a non-clean animal that's not fit for sacrifice, it had to be redeemed with a lamb. Some in all the firstborn of men had to be redeemed with a lamb. They belong to me. God says you must redeem them. It means you buy it back. Well, let me see. Where's my word? Let me just check that before I say. Having said all that, let's see if that was correct. The Dukes of Edom, we're almost there. Redeemed. In your strength you guided them to your holy habitation. Ga'al, to redeem or act as kinsman. Oh yeah, that's right. To do the part of the kinsman. Because the kinsman was the one who was charged with redeeming your family member. Like if I was sold into captivity, it would be the job of my brother to try to buy me out, man. Help me. I'm captive. And so my kinsman or another person acting as kinsman. So when someone redeems me, they're acting like my brother. You know what I mean? And God, when he redeems us, he's acting like our relation. You know what I mean? That is what relations do. They buy each other back out of slavery. See, here it means avenger, it's often translated, because the kinsman redeemer also would execute vengeance on those who like if someone murdered me, my kinsman would be the front line and going after him. Now, obviously, we have different we have laws that govern that. The state is supposed to execute vengeance on behalf of the fallen, and but the problem is a lot of times, like I said, I'm not I believe in the death penalty. I think it's right for certain crimes, of course. I just don't believe in our justice system anymore to carry it out justly. So I'm totally opposed to it, at least in our justice system, concerning the fact that they have people still locked up in Guantanamo Bay that have never been tried or charged with any crime. Well, they're terrorists. I don't know that. How do you know that? They haven't been charged with anything. How could you call someone a terrorist until you have proved it in the court of law? That's what well, why? How can you? Because our laws let them do that. And the truth is, if they wanted to abuse that power tomorrow, they could call me a terrorist and have me sent away to Guantanamo Bay, and there would be nothing anybody could do about it. And if I ever disappear, you can pretty much figure that's what happened. You know, because I was going to tell my wife the other day, I'm never running away on you, sweetheart. Don't worry. If I'm gone, it means they took me. If every day I just take off and don't come back, you can be assured they got me. But don't worry, the Lord will get them. And I'm certainly not worried about that. They'll have more than they want if they do that. And it may sound kind of grandiose, but I don't really. Please, I'm not trying to be dramatic or anything like that. I don't have any impending thought that it's going to happen. But like I said, if things go on, the way they talk, they want to, I know they're already actively censoring me. That's no imagination. And so what else? What comes out when you're done? First you censor people, then you eliminate them is what you do. That's how it starts. We don't like what you say, and now we don't like you. We're not going to let you talk. And the easiest way to prevent that from happening, right? There's a very clear path forward for them, because they know not God, and they follow after murderous ideologies. That's the problem when you're making utopia. The problem is people always. They get to a point where they say, like, hey, if you're going to bring in utopia, you're going to have to break a few eggs, right, to make an omelet. And they always end up doing that. They always end up following that logic. It's like, look, we were going to make a perfect paradise. Therefore, it's worth it to eliminate all these people. That's how genocide works. Not just over there, I mean here. And, the people wanted to learn better after World War II. Never again, never again. But it kept happening again and again and again. We've had many genocides since World War II. In a couple of weeks in Rwanda, they hacked millions of people with machetes. It doesn't take long. It can explode. When you talk about people, when you dehumanize them constantly, one of the things I found interesting is that there's the accusations that the Palestinian children are brainwashed against Israel from a young age. I don't think that really would be very hard. I don't think they have to be brainwashed against the people that will literally shoot them just for walking down the street. No. Yes, the most moral army in the world. What a bunch of BS that is. I've seen the Israeli textbooks, okay? They teach racism overtly in that country to their children. They teach them to despise the Arabs and that they're kind of like a subhuman sort of thing. That's why they call them animals. That's why I heard them calling for their destruction. I heard all those things, and people are still trying to lie to me and tell me they're not trying to commit genocide over there. Oh, yes, they are trying. Now, they're not doing it on the industrial scale like the Nazis and all that, but they've singled out a people for destruction because of their identity. And they've called for it. I said all I had to hear was Netanyahu jabbering on about Amalek, and listening to their Secretary of War and other secretaries talking about, I have removed all restraints. So whatever you think they were restrained in before, they're not doing that. They murder ambulance drivers. I heard on the radio, the guy last night saying, you don't understand. You know who I'm talking about, Mark Levin. He's like, you don't understand. There's a terrorist base under that hospital. You're a piece of garbage. Anyone who thinks it's okay to bomb a hospital because there's a terrorist base under it, you get that terrorist base, you go in the tunnels, you cowards. You go in the tunnels. They're not going in the tunnels. That's the big myth. They go in, they just blow everything up, kill people, then they come in and get their equipment blown up, mostly what it looks like to me. Because they're not able to fight them in the ruins. But they'll ruin the place bad enough, hopefully, that they want to drive everyone out, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know how it's going to work out for you. I know one thing. It's not good. Doing such black things is never good for people. And we've never lived, but we're still haunted by the way we, the Indians were also vicious and brutal just like us. Humanity is humanity. We've been fighting each other and killing each other for all time. The question is, what are we as individual Christians to do? It's like, I can't make up for all the brutality of the world. I can't stop it. I wish I could. But the Lord in His time will establish peace. But in the meantime, what do we say about it? Do we jump on the bandwagon with this? I thought it was funny today. Someone left me a comment on my Burn of Israel song, and they accusing me of, oh, that didn't work out so good for you. Like I was expecting tons of views on my channel with 900 subscribers. It's like I got 300 views and my channel has 900 subscribers. Right? It's like what? You think I expected a lot more? No, if I wanted to get a lot more views, I'd put it on my other channel where I got 80,000 subscribers. I do want a lot more views, but the implication also was I was somehow trying to cash in on the trend of jumping on the bandwagon. Was headed the other direction, buddy. That I saw. The bandwagon is where everyone's jumping on and rah 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 genocide. That's the bandwagon. I felt very much. I didn't want to come out against Israel because I knew it's unpopular. It's not a popular position, as far as I know. Of course, that's changing. I didn't consult with flesh and blood about it. I went to the Lord. And then He showed me. He opened my ears. People will hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold of the inhabitants of Palestine. There you go. Oh, that's all I needed. Now that justifies everything, right? It justifies everything. You can bomb whole families in their houses. That's perfectly acceptable. Anything to drive them out, right? Because they need to feel sorrow. Because it said so right here. This says this, but I'll tell you what. They're in for 40 years in the wilderness before they get to the promised land. And all the adults that are alive at this moment are going to be dead, everyone over 40. Their carcasses will fall in the wilderness. God has enough of them. And that's why I say, you understand, yes, God made a promise to people. And in some ways, it is still a promise for them. You know what I mean? But when I think of the Israel being back in the land, the only one I accept is when Christ is king over them. That's the Israel of God. When he reigns from Jerusalem, from the millennial, from the millennium, in the millennium, the 1,000-year reign. And I'm a millennialist, so, there you go. If you're not, then there's going to be some other whatever. I don't know. Like I said, I kind of need that period because it makes everything make sense. And I take the book of Revelation, the fact that it's revealed there as being like, now I understand Matthew 25, the dividing of the sheep and the goats. It's the resurrection of the just and the unjust. Jesus didn't mention it there, but it's separated by 1,000 years. And like I said, you could take that metaphorically too, of course. It's possible. I don't, but I mean, I can certainly talk about, it's a symbolic period. 1,000 years is just like forever, or whatever. They live and reign with Christ forever. 1,000 years, is their kingdom. But that's not really the way it talks, is it? The scripture, we will reign with him forever. This 1,000-year period, though, is something else. We're not going to go into that today. So anyways, yes, at that time, God was redeeming them out of bondage, bringing them into the wilderness, and also going to bring them upon a civilization that was evil to the core. So does that justify killing of women and children? Only God can justify such things, because God kills and makes alive. He can make life. Therefore, he has the right to say who is worthy of it, no matter what age they are. And I think it's funny that people will talk about, they'll try to come against Christians on this issue when, many of them, of the unbelievers, have no problem with abortion. Again, where you have a unique individual created. Life doesn't begin at conception. Life never ends. Life is a circle that never ends. It does end. What am I talking about? But what I mean is it's passed down. That's a better way to say it. Life is transferred, not created at conception. There are two living things that come together. A living sperm, which is definitely alive. It is not a human life, though it is a living human cell. Same thing with the egg. It is not a human life, but it is alive. You can have dead eggs that cannot be fertilized. The egg must be alive. The sperm must be alive. You can't take a dead sperm and a dead egg. You won't get a zygote. You won't get a baby. The zygote, when that forms, when you have a sperm and egg, that single cell, now you have created a unique individual. And that's when a human life begins. I can't see how anyone could argue. Every argument to put the line later is hocus pocus nonsense, not unscientific. Hocus pocus elamagocus. It's just all like, well, when do you think the soul comes? What are you talking about, a soul? You don't even believe in a soul. Why they'll accuse us of saying like, well, they think the soul comes in. Man is a soul. Now, I understand some people talk like that. I don't. I don't talk about babies receiving souls. As soon as it's conceived, well, that's a new soul. They don't see, they don't have eyes. They don't hear, they don't have ears. But there is a unique individual there. There is. When did that? Because like you go on later and you say, well, there's a baby, right? It's 6 months in the womb. But that individual, at what point was that individual with that DNA, at what point did they become that thing? Because prior to that, any sperm could have entered that egg. So the egg is just a potential, just like the sperm. It just has a random collection of half of the parent's DNA and half of the other parent's DNA. Whatever. They'll sanction that murder and the murder of millions of children like that. And then when God declares that a particular nation needs to be wiped off the earth, they get all freaked out about it. But when God says so, it's different. He's not subject to the judgment we are. He is the judge. And he can judge even children. He did Esau. The thing, when I see God ordering such things, I say, well, in that nation, at that time, every soul that was born to them was corrupt in God's sight. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ordered their destruction, of course. The beast, too. The beast is a different issue because, again, when you're carrying out something like destruction, it cannot be for profit. It must be for the righteous cause that the Lord declares. That's why taking of those things that were devoted to destruction is such a grave sin. You're not supposed to take from those things. Because these things are, like I said, it's like a sacrifice to the Lord. It's like stealing from God. You're supposed to destroy all that stuff and send it directly to the white throne for judgment. And if there's anything innocent in there, well, the Lord will sort it out. Now, as a Christian, I would never take that on myself because I don't think we're ever called to that. Ever again, the Lord would have to show me, because I'm waiting for him to come and do a bloodbath, as it's written. He will be covered in blood. Who is this that cometh from Eden with dyed garment? Edom. He's going to go to Edom with dyed garments from Basra. But who lives there now? Where is Basra? Well, we'll see. Again, a lot will change. Whenever Antichrist appears, there will be a lot of people gathering to that place. And that was another thing I was thinking about the other day. What is the essence of Zionism? When I think of Zionism, I think immediately of Isaiah 14 or Psalm 40. Or is it Psalm 40 something? I think it's Psalm 40. Don't tell me I forgot that one too. Memorize these things, and then if you don't keep repeating it to yourself. I remember I was looking at Exodus. Oh, Exodus is 40 chapters. I forgot that. For some reason I had in my head it was 44. See, it slips your mind. I used to daily repeat to myself, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then also Genesis 50, Exodus 40, Leviticus 21. No, it's not. What is Leviticus? It's more than that. Is it? I have too many books open. 27. Numbers 36. Whatever. I used to have that all at the tip of my mind. But you let it slip. Is that important? No, it isn't. I don't have to remember all the numbers of chapters. What a useless piece of information. It's good to know all the books of the Bible. But after you get to know them, you will know them. But when I was young, I was anxious, not so much anxious, but I was excited and very forward to gain knowledge. And easy knowledge, the knowledge that puffs up. Like, I've memorized all the books of the Bible. You don't know them, do you? I'm smarter than you. I can rattle off all these verses. Like and that's good to know verses. It's not Psalm 40. Which one is it? Let's just look in the Psalms. Sorry, this is taking way too long for me. And we don't really need to do this, but I just wanted to see where my psalm was. It's Psalm 48, that's right. Right? No. Yeah. Psalm 48. Beautiful for situation. The joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. The desire to place yourself on Mount Zion is satanic. God himself, and like I said, God, when he was dealing with Israel in the land, and they wanted to build a temple, he wasn't particularly excited about it. Heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. Where is the house you will build unto me? It was absurd from the beginning. And when Jesus comes, he calls it your house. Your house is left to you desolate. He disowns it. He doesn't want to dwell in temples made with hands. He wants to dwell in you. He wants you to prepare a habitation for him in you. He wants you to prepare yourself to meet him. Because you trust and know you're going to be saved. And so when you get there, you're going to I want to be all, it's like, I don't want to jump, I'm the kind of guy, I'm willing to jump into the cold water. I've done it. But it's a little, sometimes I'm more in the mood to get my feet a little dip and kind of get used to it, you know? It's like my dad, he's gotten old, and so when he takes a shower, you got to start off with the water a bit cool. And then warm it. Then he says, "Oh, it's cold." Then warm it up. Because if I give him the warm water right away, he's like, "It's hot," because he feels sensitive. You know? And I think that also, you know, and I'm just comparing that to like, I don't want to jump into God's kingdom and be a stranger. There's parables where it indicates you don't want to be that. You don't want to be the guy who comes to the wedding feast not having on a wedding garment. Because you're going to be looked at one who's mocking God. You mean you were a Christian for 30 years and you didn't change a bit from the day you first put your faith in Christ? You just buried that in the earth, just like it said not to? You know, just like Jesus warned, don't be that wicked servant. You went and did it, and you still expect, you didn't expect to get what you got. I don't know what to tell you. You know, God is not mocked. Wow, I'm an hour and 15 minutes. All right, we'll finish up here. Edom. So I'm like way off the track of I got into the song and I'm like, well, it's mostly about overthrowing things in the Red Sea. I'm not off the track as far as I'm concerned. Not really. Because like I said, this talks about fear. You know, if you're going to apply this to modern times, though, they should feel fear and dread. You know not what spirit you're of. These are not the Canaanites. These are just mostly simple God-fearing people. And then some pretty wicked rulers, too. They got wicked rulers just like ours who are brutal and also who will leverage religion for their benefit. I have noted all the leaders of the world do it. The princes of this world always love to use religion to try to manipulate people, you know, whenever it's convenient for them. I think that's why, you know what? I think that's why, like in our country, you notice when we have separation of church and state, and the leaders have trouble as that's become more exaggerated, whereas it almost becomes separation of nation and church as opposed to church and state, which I agree with. I mean, I don't want the state dictating religion. But as they became less Christian, they took on other things. And that's why you see the leaders all mouth this woke stuff, right? They all pay lip service to this, to whether it be anti-racism, whether it be, you know, pro LGBTQ. And it's that virtue signaling is a way of manipulating the people who believe in those things. Because like, oh, you're one of us, you know, you're speaking to our heart. You're telling us the things of God. Because for them, it very much is in the place of religion. And it's more like a cult than it is a regular religion. Religion usually gets formulated, and there's like, you know, I mean, we can describe our religion pretty well. Whereas the wokeism is, I have no problem describing it at all. Actually, I can, you know, there's actual multiple definitions of it. The first definition was the initial definition of being awakened to what they perceive or had not perceived, but to now newly perceive racial injustice that's sort of hidden under the surface, you know, meaning like that it's still going on. Okay, that means I'm woke. I realize there's still oppression. I don't doubt that people are oppressed, but not in the way they used to be, you know. But there's always going to be oppression in one form or another from when people get in power. It's almost like hard for them to resist. But the second definition is basically insanity. And that's the definition. It is the insanity that believes and sees racism where it doesn't exist. Sexism, you know, it is being woke falsely. And that we use it in a sort of almost like in a mockery of the original term, meaning that it means actually very much the opposite. And that's my definition of it. It is the belief in these injustices that they don't actually exist. And also a denial of reality. You know, it becomes basically the opposite of what the first definition was. It's when they have these views and it's just not based on reality. And so we mean the opposite. That's why it's not even a good word, because it's like, oh, why are we calling them the thing they want to be called? It's just they're unawakened. They're asleep. Till thy people pass over, Lord, till the people pass over. Again, they got to enter into the land. That's ultimately the thing. We also have to pass over. Not like Passover, but like we have to pass over into the land. We have to enter into the promises. We have to receive that purchased possession, which is the redemption of our body, the resurrection of the dead. That is when we enter into the promised land. And our life after baptism and belief is like the wandering in the wilderness. We need to learn to walk faithfully with God so we can enter into the land without grumbling, without mumbling, without being unfaithful, without worshiping idols. And ideally, they weren't supposed to sin at all. That's what the commandments were about. Thou shalt not. Thou shalt not. Do not do these things. These are the things I command you. You will bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, the place which you have made for you to dwell in, the sanctuary, O Lord, which thy hands have established. Yes, he established a land. He placed a tent. And then eventually there would be a temple. So like I said, he never desired, like he made it. It's an interesting thing because it talks about a temple in heaven, and I wonder about that. There is where the ark is. And I wonder about those things as far as like to what degree they are symbolic and what they are symbolic of. Because God's ultimate temple, of course, is his people. He inhabits the praises of his people. In the spirit, we are the building of the Lord collectively. And so that to me is the ultimate. So if that's the ultimate, then, when we're talking about a temple in heaven, that isn't really the ultimate. It's a vision of something, of a pattern in the heavenlies, which is according to that which is going to come forth of us. Meaning we will all together reunited with Christ make up the true temple forever and ever. And so, again, according to Jesus, that mountain no longer carries, that you don't have to worship God at Jerusalem. God does not necessarily dwell there forever. He made a sanctuary there. He made his temple there. He allowed it to be built and inhabited it for centuries. And in truth, because Christ someday will reign from Mount Zion. And that's why Satan covets to be there. It's not that place is special in any other way except for that. It's like because he has chosen to reign from that place. But we don't have to go there to worship him. And we are not, like I said, and it's not necessarily the right thing to join in sending the ethnic Jews there and promoting that they should cleanse the land of all the other people who used to be there. Because you understand, if they hadn't thrown them out, they never would have had a majority state. They had to remove them. And that's what the Palestinians call the Nakba. The disaster. Because they wanted it just to be all one country where they would all dwell in peace, just like it had been for centuries. For centuries, Christians, Jews, and Muslims shared in the Holy Land. There was a Christian quarter, there was a Jewish quarter, there was an Armenian quarter, there was a Muslim quarter. And they lived there and they had peace there because after the Crusades, they realized we all had to. Okay? We all had to be in peace. This is Jerusalem. We all value it. It should be something that is sacred to all and be a place of peace and not bought with the blood of your enemies. It's Jerusalem, not whatever. I was going to say Jerusalem, means peaceful habitation or whatever. It has peace in it. You know what I mean? Shalom. That's how it's supposed to be, a place of peace. But, if you want to have a bloody war over it, you'll have your bloody war. And it'll get bloodier and bloodier. That's how it says, I don't see how any good can come of what they're doing. Because the thing they think to do, like how, what you're, like it's in the end, you're left, okay, we drove them into the sea. We killed a bunch of them. We bulldozed over their bodies. Now what? Oh, now we have the land. Everyone's going to, and it's like, I'm not going to that party. I'm not celebrating with you. And I think there'd be precious few that will. Because when it comes out what's been done, a lot of the people who have been denying the truth may yet see it. They may yet see it. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. But the people will soon perish off the land, and their stay there is conditional. To any generation. The promise is to forever, right? And that is really only accomplished in Christ, and I don't know how you can say otherwise. But for any generation of people, of ethnic Jews, to live in that land, there are conditions. If they do not meet those conditions, they are in danger of being thrown out of the land. And that's absolutely biblical. And that, because that doesn't mean he's taking away the promise. They can still come back if you seek the Lord from thence. You call on him, he'll hear you and bring you back to the land. If you want to go in there and do it violently yourself, like I said, I can give you examples from the Old Testament where the children of Israel thought the days of Gibeah, and the days of Gibeah, they thought, oh, we're so righteous. We'll go punish those evil Benjamites for raping and killing that girl. She raped and killed that girl, they did, in that city, in Gibeah. And they went up against the men of Gibeah, and the men of Gibeah whooped them. The evildoers whooped them because they had not repented of their own sins. And you think God suddenly just doesn't care about Israel? Oh, you just kill with impunity. I forget about all that. All I care about is, do you have the right genes? And I usually don't get into this because I don't think it's important. Because people will talk about how, like, well, the Jews are not the Jews because they're. When I was a kid, when I was a young man, they were the Kenites. They were the descendants of Cain, right? But there's this other teaching that teaches they're the Khazars, the descendants of this Turkic Khazarian tribe that converted to Judaism in history. And this is not false. There was a Judaic tribe. And a lot of the Slavic and Jews from that area of the world are descended from that. But not the Arab Jews. You forget there's a lot of Arab Jews. Those are Jews who never left the Middle East. You know what I mean? They stayed there. They may have been scattered out of Israel, but they were living in Syria. They were living in all these other countries for centuries. Because there was law in Islam that protected them. It made them second-class citizens, but they used to be in second-class citizens everywhere they go. At least in that, they got respect for being a person of the book. If you're a faithful Christian or Jew, there's a carve-out for you in Islamic society. It's not what I would want, but I can at least say, like, well, like I said, for the hardness of men's hearts, they might have just killed us for not receiving their God. We don't have to convert. There's benefits. They believe in carrot and stick. Okay, whatever. I disagree. But I think we can do that politely without murdering each other. And we have for centuries. That's another, especially there. And that's how it should be. It shouldn't be a place where only one, where they are allowed to just have their way and it's just all ours and no one else has a claim to it. You know what? I wanted to say something very profane at the person who thinks that. You think it's just all for you. It's just for you. That's not how. I don't believe so. If they think that that's what all God really wants is he needs their feet on the land. It's such a weird. Yeah, that's what God wants. It's like, oh yeah, he wants God, bring down fire on the evildoers. Yeah. He wants us to all execute judgment. Right. I like that. So now we have, again, that verse is just the recap. And then Miriam comes out and she sing to the Lord. So I'm going to just break here at verse 22. Okay. I'm going to break at verse 22 because it's going to be, they're going to have another thing, the waters of Mara. I didn't want to skip over that. And we'll go 22. We'll do that right into chapter 16 tomorrow. I'm going to try to not be so current events on this. This chapter, I knew it was going to be an excuse to do that because as I was listening to it, I was thinking all about it. Because of the way people could pervert it, like they do many scriptures, to just say this is just, oh, this is carte blanche. You have a blank check, Israel. Do as you will. God, he doesn't care how you do it. He just needs you to get to the land. Get to the land by any means. That is not the way the Lord works. He never worked that way. When you read Nehemiah and Ezra, how carefully they returned to the land, with what fear they returned to the land, with what thanksgiving they returned to the land. And as Rabbi Weiss said, here's a picture of the founding of Mount Zion. None of them have their head covered. No respect at all for the Lord. None. Because they don't believe in God. The only thing they believe about God is that he gave them that land. And I'm sorry, that is not how it works. Okay? And Christians that think otherwise, I'm sorry, you're very deceived on this matter. I begin to not worry, but like I do think that it's, like what you get behind is important. I mean, I've always said I didn't want to have anything to do. It's wrong for me to claim I was a supporter of Israel. I've been very pro-ethnic Jew, and I still am. As far as like they are, yes, they to them pertain the promises. And all those things. The ethnic Jews also they need to be observant of the Torah, please. Of course. To them pertain the promises. And if they need the gospel, that's all they lack. And so I want to have love for all the people of the world, all God's people, especially the people who he chose of old, and who to whom pertain those promises. But to give them a blank, I don't give myself a blank check to do what I will in the name of God. Shall they? And not even in the name of God. In the name of, well, God wants us to have this land, don't you think? They're cynically using Christians. I remember years ago, literally like 25 years ago, watching this Jewish woman talk, maybe more than 25 years ago, probably more like 30 years ago, watching this woman talk about how, she almost had like these talking points about Zionism and about how, oh, it's wonderful. Christians are helping them return to the land, and Christians are doing this, and Christians, and we're fulfilling prophecy because God said, and she had these scriptures ready, and she's like, and I could tell, and she was smiling, and there was a certain cynicism to it all. Like they knew they were manipulating us. And because they knew that many Christians saw it as fulfilling prophecy, and so they tried to get them to see like, well, this is something we should participate in. Because I don't deny that it's prophetic for Israel to be back in the land. Sure. You got to remember, last time I saw God talking to them, which would be the time of Jesus, he wasn't exactly a friendly encounter. So, anyways, thanks for joining me. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. I think we'll be a much more. This has been, like I said, this particular topic, throwing the enemies in the Red Sea. I think it is particularly suitable for digressing into this thought. With the next study, I think we will have a little more close to the scripture discussion. So thanks for joining me. We look forward to being back in tomorrow because the testimony of Jesus, not of anything else, is the spirit of prophecy. That's what it's all about.
I will sing unto Yahweh, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider hath he cast into the sea. Yah is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation. My Father